Hello, everyone. We have two great panelists, Jessica Lam from the Augie Access Program Director at Augustana University, and Diana Joseph, an English Department Professor at Minnesota State University, Mankato. They are at different stages of program development and operation. So each of them can give us very important perspectives on capacity building on campus. Welcome and thank you, Jessica and Diana, for being here today with us. Through today's learning community event, we would like to have every one of us take learning opportunities from each other in terms of how to build allies, relationships, key people that need to be on board, and how to get it started and sustain, and how to promote the equity conversation on campus. We will have some guiding questions for Jessica and Diana to navigate these topics. We welcome contributions from other community during this discussion, especially those of you from other higher educations. Okay, should we look at the first guiding question then? Jessica, can you get started on this first question? Share a brief origin story of the Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Initiative for students with intellectual disability and developmental disability on your campus. And then Diana will add.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, by the way, for having me today. Augie Access was a dream long before it happened for several professors on campus. Shortly after the Higher Ed Act was passed in 2008, they became super interested in trying to make a program. And there was actually a family with who had a daughter with Down syndrome who wanted to go to college like her friends. And they were able to work with a professor on campus who had a really good relationship with the registrar and a few professors. And he was an education professor. So he was able to pull in some students who could help her out. And she was able to take a couple classes on campus for a year. And then they began to research other programs because that was very successful. Unfortunately, the family moved away, so they couldn't try to pilot anything more. The administration around that 2010, 12 mark had kind of been, well, maybe we can get a program together. And so they sent the three professors from our education department to various other programs across the country. So they went to tour these programs and became heavily involved in trying to create a startup. And it looked like it was all going to go and be a wonderful thing. And then right at the last minute, there was some change in administration and they pulled the plug. And then their dreams were kind of dashed again at starting this program. They never lost hope about it, though, and the state of South Dakota in 2014 put out an RFP for an inclusive post-secondary program. There were a few universities and state schools that applied, and then Augustana also applied. We're a private college, so they weren't too sure that they would be awarded the grant, but they were. And so in 2015, they were able to start officially the Augie Access program. It started with 5 young men. It was a 3-year-long program, and we have learned a lot since then, but it's been a rocky ride to get there. And then we got the grant, and then it was a little bit of a rocky ride to become a full Augustana program. And just here we are now, woven into the fabric of the entire university. So that's kind of our origin story.
Great, thanks.
I would also like to thank you for inviting me to come and talk. My computer seems to be laggy, so I keep getting your internet is unstable. So if I fade in and out, maybe you can, I don't know, signal me somehow. I hope it's just a temporary thing. My origin story for this is I direct a community engagement program that provides creative writing workshops to different groups in Mankato. We were working with elders in assisted living. We were doing storytelling workshops with the Islamic Center, with an after-school program, and also with Action Club Theater, which is a group that serves folks who have disabilities. Wilbur Frank, some of you guys might know her, was directing that. She went on to form a nonprofit called Open Arts Minnesota. So I continued partnering with Wilbur on these creative writing workshops. And we started that like in 2014, 2015. And not long before the pandemic, I was meeting with the Poets Club, and I thought one of the participants seemed kind of bored. Like maybe he was tired of doing poetry for all of those years. And, like I'm a teacher. And when a student seems bored, I think what they need is something to do. Like that might be a little more challenging or a little more interesting. So I talked to Wilbur about it, and what we cooked up was a philosophers club, right? We have Poets Club. Now let's do Philosophers Club. And I don't know, it was like a very short jump from let's have Philosophers Club to, oh my gosh, inclusive higher ed is a thing. Let's do that. So I think that's our origin story, is that someone was bored. And I wanted something more interesting for him to do, because, it just seemed like it would be interesting. It would be fun. It would be challenging, and it would be engaging. And folks seemed like they were up to the challenge of it. So why not? That's our story. We kind of started in it was a thing that started more with our community partner than it did on campus. We ended up moving gradually to folks on campus.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Sally?
Yeah, well, Diana, as a teacher, I have that. I'm very empathetic, and I know that when students are bored in your class, it's not because of you. It's they're most often not talented enough, or the expectations are not high enough, and more needs to be brought in, and more needs to be people need to be challenged and excited and motivated to learn.
Oh, I think on occasion it's because of me. I'm pretty sure.
So our next step is, it was really great to hear kind of where things started.
I think this question, yeah.
I just want to introduce this question. You started with the origin story, and then there was the process of building relationships and partnerships and kind of that infrastructure on your campus. So Diana, you can start out and kind of go from your story from where you went next.
Yes. So, we wanted this Philosophers Club, and then the pandemic happened. Because, a thing that occurred to me was, I think folks would probably like it if we just started having our meetings on campus, right? So let's move Poets Club and let's move Philosophers Club to campus and hold it there. And then the pandemic happened. Right. So things kind of got shelved for a while, but I continued doing those creative writing workshops with Open Arts Minnesota. And at the same time, I was talking to folks on campus about inclusive higher ed, right? And kind of introducing them to the idea, but also learning more about it myself. When we talk about strategies for building partnerships on campus, I think my strategy has been to have conversations with one person at a time. So I think I have had a conversation with every single department chair in arts and humanities, every single program director in arts and humanities. I'm now starting to have conversations with individual faculty members in arts and humanities. It's a lot of talking. And those conversations always seem like each one is at least a minimum an hour. But it seems to me that having that kind of buy-in from faculty is absolutely necessary to make inclusive higher ed work, because what we need is for faculty to do universal design for teaching and learning, right? We need them to set up their classes so those barriers to equitable education are removed. I would also say that bringing folks from the community to meet my dean has also been a really key strategy. So I brought Wilbur Frink to meet him. I brought Leanne Erickson to meet him. I brought some folks from the disability community to meet him, because I just wanted him to get a sense of how important this was to people and how meaningful this was to people, to take it from being something that seems like more abstract and theoretical into here are faces, here are real people who have real stories. That got his attention. I think that bringing community and campus together is a really important part of this. But, another thing was I wanted input from the community for what they wanted the program to look like, what kinds of things they would like for it to include, like what sort of areas of, majors or focus or concentrations would be most appealing to people. I don't know, disability talks about how if it's about us, don't do it without us. So it felt very important to loop those voices in and have them talking to folks at kind of like every level, whether it was a department chair or my dean or the associate dean or, just regular faculty. So I'm constantly too trying to rope people into coming to some of our Poets Club or Action Club theater kinds of events, just so they can get a sense of I don't know how cool all of this is and how very doable it is.
Yeah, and meaningful. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Jessica, do you want to add your strategies and
Sure.
experiences?
When the program kind of first began, when they wrote the grant, they put it around Think College's framework, but that was all they had. That was as far as they had gotten. So they had won the grant in November of 2014 and were to have a program in place by the fall of 2015. And I found out that this program was happening because I was leaving a current position I was at, and I wanted a spot for my student. Because I knew he was benefiting from the 18 to 21-year-old program we had on a college campus in a different part of the state. And I just knew he needed to continue that. Somehow I wound up with a job and wound here, and which was a great God plan. And we both came to the program. But when they came, it was very much they hired me and they put me in an office and they said, make something. They didn't really have anything, but they did have a few key allies on campus, and that was instrumental in being able to make things happen. So the president of the college at that time had a brother with autism, and he had since passed away, but disability was something that was in the fabric of his life. He had always wished there were more opportunities for his brother. And when I came here, the president was in his mid 60s. So education was very different then for people on the spectrum, and his experiences were very different. So he was very much an ally, and he was fantastic at, as things were going, disseminating that information down. Our faculty governance had been set up a little different at that time, but we did have a dean over the college who was also a previous SPED teacher in her former life. And so she became a key ally and was present where there was maybe some hesitation to make sure she was there for other people. So for instance, we had to build a relationship with our registrar's office. There was some concern about bringing a program in like this. Not only in what would these courses look like, how do we keep the courses separated? Are we going to allow students to take these classes for credit, or is it audit only type of thing? So the dean and the president were really fundamental in fostering a great relationship between myself and the registrar, to where she was concerned about the amount of work it would create in her office. And, we were able to work all the way through that. So those were some key allies. And we initially, once we kind of got that taken care of, our next allies that we really wanted on board with the program was our financial aid office and our campus life, because we wanted our students to live on campus. We wanted them to not be a program that was on the fringes. We wanted it to be a meaningful program. And we wanted our students fully involved in everything that went on here. We didn't want this to be like a token experience, because they deserve more than that. And so does everybody else who comes here. So Campus Life became one of our hugest partners and allies as we worked to what it was like to get all these students to live on campus, and making sure that the experience was tailored to them. I came from a background where person-centered planning is very important to me, and they were right on board to help students guide what their residence life would look like. Did they want a more quiet dorm? Were they going to have to all go with the freshmen, or could they be elsewhere? And they were so open and willing to work with us that it kind of made other people on campus just like hop right on board. We also had a great relationship with a lot of the sports teams on campus who welcomed the idea of having our students be a part of their teams in various fashions. And so they also turned around and became great advocates for us. I think what surprised me the most coming to this program from the program I was at previously was how quickly the faculty became ready allies and ready to go and to dive right in, and to, instead of saying we can't do this, or how do we do this, or how is this going to change the way I have to teach, it was just, well, what do we need to do? And so that was very welcoming and refreshing. We do not have a menu of courses our students can choose from. They are open to everything except the nursing program, because that's so full and you have to be accepted into that program. But there is no special requirements for whatever courses they take. So those have really been our biggest allies on our campus. And lastly, I have to say, as time has gone on, it didn't necessarily start this way, but the student body has become such an advocate and ally for our students. So 2 years ago, really cool thing happened where our student governance, the Augustana Student Association, came to us and said, it just kind of occurred to us, we don't have an Augie Access student in our state or in our Senate, and we need them to be involved because they're a part of what decisions we make. And now they go through the whole election, the whole, run a campaign, all that, just like anybody else. They have to serve office hours in the ASA office, and they have to be on committees. And that was all just the student body recognizing that. So as time has come on and people have become more aware, it seems like we don't have anybody on campus who isn't an ally anymore.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Jessica. And I'm just curious, for anybody else in our participating today who's familiar with an initiative on a college campus or is trying to build an initiative on a college campus, are there any strategies that anybody wants to share, or partnerships they're working with to get an initiative started? You can just unmute and talk if you want to. Okay, well then we're going to go on to our next question. And it's just sort of the natural progression from what strategies and how to build allies is to move on to what challenges have you faced with developing an initiative for students with intellectual disability on your campus? Who would like to go first for this one?
Go ahead, Diana.
Jessica? Okay.
Go ahead, Diana.
I think we're still early enough in the process that I haven't really fit, like, I guess time, because I'm also teaching. I'm teaching at the same time that I'm working on this. So I could easily be working on this full time. And so just being able to balance and, remember that there are a couple of courses that I'm teaching and, students that I cannot neglect while I'm doing all the work toward this. I have run into some grumpy faculty. I don't know. I think you're very lucky, Jessica, that you haven't run into grumpy faculty, but I have run into some. I've run into some faculty who said, I love this idea, but I don't know how I could make it work in my class. And I think that's where those one-on-one conversations become real valuable, because I know exactly how you can make it work in your class. And here are 6 different ideas that I have. And then I think that once people, start to think about the things that they do in a classroom a little differently, then something clicks. And they're like, oh, well, obviously that's how I can do this. And that's how I can make it work. So, because it also seems to me like I need buy-in, not just from one faculty in each department or even 2, because I don't know, if somebody goes on sabbatical or if somebody retires, I can't have part of the program just sort of collapsing because we don't have faculty for it. I want everybody. I'm really working on getting many people on board, as many as possible. There are some departments that just seem tailor-made for this. Conversations that I've had with music. Oh my gosh, music is ready to do this tomorrow, right? Philosophy needs a little more time to readjust how they do things or rethink how they do things. The art department is ready to do this tomorrow, right? I have a meeting lined up actually tomorrow with a guy who teaches in communication studies. They have an advocacy minor. That is very, very cool. And I want it really bad. I want those courses because I think they're just such a nice fit for some of the vision that we have for our program. So I'm going to start those kinds of conversations. But I think time, I guess my big challenge is time at this point. Maybe later it'll be something else.
Not funding. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be what would buy me some more time, right? If I had some funding to buy myself some course releases. But yeah, so maybe down the road when we're a little more further along. I want to get us to, past the point of no return before I start making big funding demands.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. Jessica?
I guess
on challenges.
Yep. When we first started, I think the biggest challenge was there was just one person. They had hired me to be the teacher, to be the coordinator, to write all the curriculum and the syllabi and all of those things. So at first, that first year was insane. We only had 5 students, but they had kind of insisted at parent request that it was almost set up more like high school. So originally our classes ran 5 days a week and for an hour each time. And most of the classes that they took were ones then that I would teach. At the beginning, they only took one course out of the catalog, which I just felt was completely now the whole idea of what we were doing. And so we got over that challenge. I convinced him to hire a program coordinator. And then we did switch to the typical college schedule and the challenge of becoming more inclusive, because I feel like we should just be all inclusive. We've been working at slowly chipping it together. We're in our 7th year, and we are down now to where only 1/4 of our coursework is Augie Access courses. The rest are all out of the catalog, with some semesters where they don't even take an Augie Access course. Because I feel that is, and research shows that's where the most learning is occurring. And high schools are getting better about teaching some of those transition needs. So they're coming here with a lot more skills maybe than what they had 7 years ago out of high school. So being able to convince the dean of that and get that going was a challenge, but it is better. And it was helped when we pursued the status with the U.S. Department of Ed of being a comprehensive transition, post-secondary and transition program, because you have to have at least 50% inclusive classes to get that designation. So another challenge we have had has been funding. We had $100,000 a year for 3 years as a part of our grant, and that really got things going. And at that time, the grant was started from funding from South Dakota Department of Voc Rehab, the Division of Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Ed. And at the time then too, VR was very involved and was actually paying like the program fee for students. And after the grant stopped, they kind of stopped and withdrew their support of the idea. We have a lot of politics in South Dakota. I don't know what Minnesota is like, but there's a lot of angst about spending money at private universities versus state-run universities. So a lot of the funding that was available to our students is gone. And so while we have been able to create our program in a sustainable way, a lot of our students are finding they aren't able to finish if they don't receive some help from a school district or are not independently wealthy, which a lot of our families are not. But we were able over the years to reset our price down from almost $20,000 a year for a program fee down to $12,000 a year. So we really are very careful about managing our resources and keeping track of every dollar. But that is one of the big challenges we have faced is funding. When we became a university program, we had to prove we could be self-sustaining. And so we did get the ability to be a non-revenue bearing program, which was great. So as long as I break even, I'm pretty good. And then we also have gotten some generous donations from a few families, which have enabled us to keep the program going in a long-term fashion. So that hasn't been as huge of a challenge anymore, but it is still kind of a struggle for our students who want to come. That family also was generous enough to make sure we could offer 3 scholarships every year for students. They're small, they're about $1,000, but every bit helps. So that challenge has kind of, we're just doing what we can with that. I saw there was a question about which percentage of our students are taking courses for credit. That's a great question. We have, it's a mix. So students can choose to audit them or take them for credit. This cohort that just came in of 8 students, I have 4 of the 8 who are taking every single course for credit. And then I have the other 4 who are taking some for credit and some for audit. Those who are taking some for credit and some for audit might be taking like their PE courses for credit. We have a great sports focus in part of our university. So sometimes they'll take that for credit, but then they're taking like their histories or music or biology or whatever as audit. So it really varies year to year. But we have quite a competent academically wise cohort this year. So that's the most I've ever had out of a cohort who is taking all for credit. There has not been much of a challenge with students taking classes for credit, we put out the expectation that they're entitled to accommodations. And we have a person on our Augie Access staff who's our internship and employment coordinator, but he also serves as the director of accessibility for the whole university. So he is great in ensuring those accommodations get out to professors and that professors are doing what they need to do. So that has been super helpful. And then we also hire peer navigators who can serve as support in the classroom or out of the classroom as tutors for our students, whether or not they're taking their classes for credit or for audit. So they have quite a bit of support in that capacity.
And Jessica, did you see the other question from Barb was what % are co-enrolled as transition students with an IEP?
Great question. We have 18 students right now. I think 6 of them are co-enrolled. A lot of our school districts in South Dakota are very generous in the funding they will give students to come. We have a few school districts who won't participate in that fashion. But yes, most are very, very good. So 6 of the 18 currently are receiving help from school districts.
Great. Any other questions for Jessica? Or any other challenges that those of you in the community are facing that you want to share?
Oh, Jessica, I'm wondering what the help from school districts looks like.
Sure. So it varies by school district. We don't have an opinion on that. We say that's up to the IEP team to determine. But for most of our school districts, they will pick up our program fee. And then room, board, books, that type of thing is typically left for parents to take care of. So that's how it's looked in the past. We've had quite a few who will pick up the whole program fee, but we have a couple school districts who will say, we're only going to pick up the tuition for Augie Access classes. So they might pay like $5,000 a year for the Augie Access classes. And then the parents have to figure out, apply for financial aid and for Pell Grants, scholarships, that type of thing.
And sorry, I'm asking a bunch of questions right now. So do you then follow an IEP during that time? And what does that look like? Who's on the team?
Sure. So the school districts retain case management, but my background is as a high school special ed teacher, and I'm still certified to do that in the state of South Dakota. So I work very closely with them to write the present levels, the goals, the transition activities. I send every quarter, which would be our midterm, the progress notes that they send out to families and the semester type things like that. So we all work as a team. When it's time for a 3-year re-eval, if the student doesn't live nearby, I can do some of those tests, or else we can work to get them back home. Like if they were to need a new IQ test, we could try to get them back to their school district to get that done. But a lot of time they're carrying that over. So it's just some updated informal assessments or transition assessments or updated autism assessments, those type of things.
And do you know if the school districts are able to still get funding based on per pupil, or is it considered open enrollment? I'm just wondering what that partnership with the district looks like, because frankly, that's what I want to try to build with our school and local university.
Sure. Yes, they remain on that school's child count. So
Okay.
they're still counted. And then some school districts, they visit with our South Dakota Department of Ed to figure out how to code it, like whether they're general education or separate day school or something like that. They figured that part out with the US or with the South Dakota Department of Ed. But yes, they stay on their child account as enrolled in that district. And a lot of what it looks like, I believe, is almost like a dual credit kind of thing. But they don't call it that here, but that's kind of what it looks like.
So they're not getting PSEO funding, are they?
I'm not sure what that is.
post-secondary educational opportunity. So basically, like sometimes our high school students, if they can meet the criteria to enter college, which many of our students with intellectual disabilities can't meet that entrance criteria, the school district has a relationship with the university where they will pay for that for the courses that the student is taking while also taking high school courses or transition courses.
Yeah, no, it's not that type of funding.
Okay.
No, we don't have that in South Dakota like that. I'm necessarily aware of how they use it. They're typically just using their IDA reimbursement from the state of South Dakota to pay for it. So, depending on what their disability level is in the state of South Dakota, so say for autism, the school districts get reimbursed back almost $17,000 a year for the education of that student. And then I think that's what they're using to fund programs like this.
All right. Thank you so much.
I don't know if that was
Thanks.
totally helpful or answered that, but.
Well, and there's a few more questions, Jessica, but I think we might, Abby and Mary, could we save your questions for after 4 o'clock? And so that we can finish the panel questions that we have for everyone. Is that okay? I can't see if you're saying it's okay or not.
I think they say
Thanks,
yes.
Abby.
They say yes.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
And I think both of you kind of already touched on this next question, but I'll let Singhi continue our last 2 questions.
Yeah. So we're wondering how you have achieved or hope to achieve sustainability of the post-secondary education initiative on your campus. Whoever goes first.
Like I did mention, we have received a grant that was wonderful. We have a business model that we work with the business office to make sure we're self-sustaining. It does require a certain number of people enrolled in the program each year. And so that is something we have to pay a lot of attention to. At first, I was pretty scared about what that would look like when the grant funding left. But there was a lot of support at the administration level in seeing how important this initiative was to our overall core values of the university, but B, also our diversity plan, which we'll be talking about in the next question. I think one of the things though, is that's always going to be on our mind. How can we keep working to make sure we're sustainable, that we can keep growing, because we're the only program like this in South Dakota. There is one other one that is only for 18 to 21-year-olds. So they have to get school district funding, and they get to choose from 3 or 4 courses on a campus, and they don't get to live on campus or anything like that. So it's a very limited experience. So we really want to make sure we can meet the need. I probably get 30 applications a year. And before I can only take 5 or 6. Now we're hoping each cohort I can take up to 10 because we were able to hire some other staff. So I think sustainability centers also around how many people can you serve in a way that all their needs are met, and keeping your program very sound.
Thanks. Diana, do you have anything to add?
Well, we're still early enough that I can probably be naive in what I think will help us achieve sustainability. I think becoming a successful program, and by successful program, I mean we are going to be fully inclusive, providing a high quality, fully inclusive arts and humanities education, and a fully inclusive residential college life experience. I think that being very visible, both on campus and off campus, is an important part of that. I think having solid partnerships both on campus and off campus is part of that. And I think too that I'm a big believer in the co-creation of knowledge, right? And I can see so many ways that we will be able to co-create knowledge with students with disabilities and their non-disabled peers and faculty and community groups. I'm really excited about the kind of scholarship that can come out of this and different projects. And I think that's like another thing with having these one-on-one conversations with faculty when we just start brainstorming the kinds of scholarships and the kinds of projects that can come out of this. I don't know, it's really fun. But I just believe that if I do all of those things, like, I don't know, if you build it, they will come, I guess. But again, like, we're still early enough that I can probably be like super naive and romantic about it.
Thank you very much for sharing, both of you. And we have one last guiding question that is, what challenges, oh, not this one. So how is disability part of the equity conversation on your campus? I think this is also as part of the previous question. So like, do you have any campus equity statement, or is disability part of their disability inclusion equity efforts on campus? Or what are some ways people have advocated on their campus? Yeah, it's not necessary to respond to all of these questions, but anything related to your experiences, we'll be happy to hear.
We have a very big diversity and initiative, inclusion initiative on our campus that has right from the start included disability in the narrative. So when we just finished up a strategic plan a couple of years ago and began our new Viking Bold 2030 plan, and written right into that strategic plan was all about how we could use our core values at Augustana to create an environment that is inclusive of everyone, no matter what ability, no matter what race, religion, all of those things. And we hired a new person to be in charge of that. And she came and was so amazing to work with. She came to us from South Carolina and just was a breath of fresh air and fully embraced the disability part of it, as well as the race part of it, as part of the sexual orientation part of it, and all of those things. And she created a disability, or not a disability, a diversity and inclusion advocacy certificate that faculty and students can earn on campus. And that has been a major success and was actually won a national award. So it's really nice on our campus to know how it all just fits into the very fabric of what we want to exemplify at Augustana, that we want to meet everybody no matter what, where they are, and all move forward together. So we've been very lucky in that aspect, that disability is included in that conversation. And very lucky to have our inclusion coordinator, because she's amazing.
Great, thanks.
We have an office of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's the vice president of that office sits on the president's cabinet. So we've got the infrastructure in place, but to be honest, I'm not sure what that office is doing to advance a conversation about disability. I think that the work that they have been doing has been largely focused around race. I mean, really since the summer of 2020, that's kind of been where everybody's attention is. I think that we just need to, I know there are faculty and I know students who are really advocating for disability. And I think we just need to keep pushing at our administrators and poking at them and reminding them, like, inclusion means everybody. Inclusion means disability. So I think it'll be us loudmouths that really get administrators to start to pay attention to it. But I think there's just a lot of work to be done in that area. Yeah.
Mhm.
To
Thank you.
piggyback off that for a second, if I can, because I think too, when we talk about the disability efforts on campus, people with ID and DD have not always been included in that. It was like, well, if you had a physical disability or ADHD or learning disability. And I think it, like initially before we started moving in a different direction as our university, that was kind of the disabilities that were okay to include, where it has been super nice now that they realize all means all. And that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you both of you for sharing all of your experiences and input. Do we have to open for any other community members to share their experiences? Is there any questions around these topics or questions? I can't read any chatting box right now. I'm having some difficulties with technical
That's
issue.
okay. Nothing's in the chat about it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, then I think we're ready for wrapping up. I apologize for, actually, we are planning to launch the poll for getting some feedback from everyone, but somehow I don't really have any control right now for Zoom with the technical issue right now. So probably we could send the link for having a quick feedback from all of you later. Yeah.
Okay.
If that's okay, we'll just send the poll with the email that follows up after this conversation. I just have a few wrap up information, and then there's still a few questions in our chat that I am very curious about the answers. So please hang around, but I know some people have to leave right at 4. So for everyone, upcoming learning community events next month, it's going to be Amy Diagate from, I think that's how you say her name, I'm sorry. If it's not, from the University of Maryland, and she's going to share about the TERPS Exceed initiative that enrolled their first student with ID this fall. So we're kind of going across the country here. What's unique about Amy and this is we're really going to focus on the model and how they built the model of the program, and it's one that really reflects the standards of MIHEC. So we're excited to share that conversation. And then November, if anyone is interested, there is a national conference. It's called State of the Art Conference and Student Leadership. It's like I haven't gone to this, but I know Liz and Mary have. It's 2 conferences at the same time. Am I correct? There's one both for students and one for families and college initiatives. And they have a college fair. And so you can sign up as a family, basically, right? If you have a family member that, and I don't know. I think Mary or Liz should share more about it because I haven't attended, but I plan to attend this year. Barb says it's awesome. Okay, thanks, Barb.
Yeah. It's simultaneous sessions for students. The students most of them are student-led presentations and some social stuff in there too. It's really fun. And then the parent session is not as fun. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so this simultaneously tailored for students and family.
I'll also add the State of the Art Conference has different, what I would describe as tracks. So they have sessions that are specifically, have specific targeted audiences, I guess. So some are specifically for families or parents, some are for educators, some are, more for the faculty and staff at institutes of higher ed that that have initiatives or are looking to establish something at their on their campus.
Thanks.
It is a really good, and this year is another virtual just because of the COVID, but it'll be good to attend in person when that's available.
Mhm.
And it's all free for students, right? All the student portion?
This year, the students portion is free. Yep. Yeah, and the fees for the conference are reasonable. I don't know if this year they're offering scholarships, but if anybody, if that is a barrier, at least a couple of years ago when it was in person, they did offer scholarships that are, it's a very easy process to apply and to be considered.
Okay. The next thing I just want to draw your attention to, and we'll send this out in the email, but thinkcollege.net is the National Technical Center for Inclusive Higher Ed. And this events link will bring you to all sorts of webinars and affinity groups across the country. And I highly recommend it if there's one area you want to dive into related to credentials, student credentials, or universal design for learning is the one that I will be attending soon. Different topic areas that you can attend as family members too. So check those out. Again, look for our emails coming out from MIHEC at, I put UNM, University of Minnesota. I did it backwards. Wait till the last page for the misspelling. It's umn.edu. And look for those emails and also information about if you have a family member or know of a student that would like to be a student spotlight for our MIHEC webpage. Please let us know. So thank you very much. And we will stick around now for anyone that wants to hear the answers to the rest of these questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon. It was fun to hear about this, the opportunities of it. Take care.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.
All
right.
Should we
I'm
go
going
back
back.
to some of those questions?
Sure, Liz,
Yep.
do you want to read those off?
Yeah. Let's see. Mary get asked, are the school districts providing any of the on-campus support for the students? Jessica.
No, we provide that through our peer navigator services. If a student, because that's part of our program fee, the tuition is in there, but then there's a chunk of money for peer navigator support. So we don't have the school district pay anything like that or have to take care of that. We take care of all that.
Okay. Another question was, how many students continue on with classes once they complete transition services?
Most of them. 2 had to leave after their second year because they could not secure enough money to attend. So that was super unfortunate. And then we actually have also had 2 students who continued on for that last year when they weren't eligible for IDA funding, finish out here and then actually have matriculated to other universities and in our associate's or bachelor degree seeking programs.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Do you know if the school district funding, IDEA funding, or general ed money? If the school
it's
district,
IDA funding.
okay, all right. And then there's a question from Ryan. If you had any details regarding the grant you received from South Dakota Medicaid Agency VR Ed, would you be able to share them? Just any reports or what the grant was? Was it through request for proposals and how the agencies carried out the grant?
Yeah, so the grant was an RFP that came out, and a lot of that part I wasn't like necessarily in on in the beginning. So VR came together with the Department of Ed and the Division for Developmental Disabilities and the Council for Developmental Disabilities in South Dakota, and they each funded a portion of the money. They left the program fairly broad opened. They did want a framework that was research based. So we did have to develop everything that we did around the Think College quality standards and frameworks and benchmarks and all of that. And then we had to report out at the end of every year about what students were accomplishing, how many classes they were taking, what types of activities they were involved in. Yeah, so that was kind of how it went. And then towards the end, they really kind of just pulled away altogether. Like we said, we didn't even have a meeting with them after the last final report came out. We used to have these big long meetings where everybody would come and talk about it. We didn't even have that at the end. So it was kind of I don't know, South Dakota government and administration can be a little strange. So I don't have a great answer for that question, but that was kind of how it was initially all pieced together.
Okay. And Barb, did you want to share another?
Yeah, if you have time, I just didn't know how to write this one.
Yeah.
And maybe it's for the speakers, probably primarily for Jessica, just because where she's at in the process, but I'm such a champion for these programs. And so I like to stay positive, but reality wise, having fewer than 400 programs nationally, when there are thousands and thousands of, campuses and universities and having so few in our state, it seems like there must be some challenges that we haven't talked about today yet. And that maybe you, Jessica, as someone who has made this happen and gotten through those obstacles, why do you think more of your cohort, your colleagues in other states, places, colleges, campuses, if this is so great, and I believe it is, and it's the right thing to do, why are there so few? There must be some, I don't know, can you identify systemic issues? What do you see as the greatest barriers that maybe we need to be working on breaking down?
I think locally in South Dakota, I love our state, so don't get me wrong, but we're behind the ball on a lot of things when it comes to education. There is a mindset of a significant portion of the population who doesn't necessarily always buy into inclusion, no matter what that looks like. So that, I think it makes it really hard. There is also a lot of politics going on in our extremely small state. We have, less than 800,000 people, and the people who are in charge tend to be more vocal maybe than the rest of us. I'm learning how to try to find a voice and to advocate at bigger legislative levels. And you asked such a good question. I'm not sure exactly how to answer it. So I'm sorry if I'm stumbling around, Barb, but that is some of it. It's just this mindset that you have people in this state who, if their own child isn't involved in it, or they haven't seen the gains their students are making, they just don't buy into that it's necessary. South Dakota also has a philosophy in K through 12 special education that we provide a car for you to drive, and it might be a Ford, and that will be good enough as long as it gets you there. And they consider something like this like the Cadillac version of services, and they don't consider that being fiscally responsible, which is sad because these programs lead to better outcomes in employment and more independence and less reliance on things like disability and all of those things. And so they're kind of spiting themselves because they're not looking at the bigger picture. But that's some of what we face just right here. And I think you're starting to see in places, it's so cool to click on some states and see that they have 12 programs, and that's amazing. Will South Dakota ever get there? I don't know. I'm not confident. We keep talking to other universities about starting something, and there is no interest from our Board of Regents to pursue it at the public universities. So.
And have you, I'm just wondering if, and this is related to the question, for me, there seems to be almost an elephant in the room kind of issue around the concept of intellectual disability, a perceived mismatch with higher education, because all youth don't get to go to college.
Right.
You know, they have to be otherwise qualified, and then they can get their disability accommodations for access. So to me, when I'm talking to other colleges and universities, I can sense that almost they don't want to say that.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you encounter that, and if there's something that you were able to do, and maybe the other person on the call, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name.
Diana. Yep.
Diana.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of leaping over that to a next level of, yes, we understand that, but, or and. So if there are any keys to that, I think if we can't figure that out, we may not be able to make the movement forward we'd like to make at a university and college level.
That is a big concern. I think that is an elephant in the room in a lot of universities. I feel like we got very lucky at Augustana, and this was the right place for it, because there is this whole notion, yes, not everybody goes to college and not everybody gets a college experience. And there is some feeling that somehow these kids are getting by with something when they get to come to the program, you know, because maybe they only got a certificate of completion or whatever. So I don't know how to help other universities through that. I know when that was brought up by a few very rare faculty on our campus, the administration was instrumental in shooting that notion down, that they had put themselves on the path to be a university for all, recognized the value that any human being can bring to a campus, despite whatever disability ability that they have, and that we all can live and learn in a global community and make things better for everybody. And until you get a university that has that mindset, I don't see it happening, you know? So, but I do get scared that this movement is going to stall. Like, I feel like we've come so far here at Augie in 7 years, but we've made no gains as a state. A lot of states will create demonstration Medicaid waivers to help pay for programs like this. I've been calling our division for 3 years and I never get a call back. And then I try to run into them at conferences and talk to them and they don't, you know, so there's just we're stopped in South Dakota. We're not stopped at Augie. You know, we can keep doing what we can do here, but that's one private university.
Thank you so much. And it's just, I really appreciate what you're both doing to have a program and how you're helping all of us learn. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think I think it is systemic. I think a lot of folks are so, have so deeply internalized that medical model of disability. The disability is a problem that needs to be solved, or it's a problem that needs to be fixed or rehabilitated, or, you know, it's in need of a solution. It's one of the things with what we're doing by making our program in arts and humanities, because we are like a series of disciplines, academic disciplines, that does not look at disability as a problem that needs to be solved. We see it as, an aspect of diversity or just another way to be human, right? But I think people need to know that. I'm teaching a humanities class this semester where it's essentially intro to disability studies. We're 5 weeks in and my students' minds are blown because they just had never thought of any of this before. Just like introducing them to the medical model versus the social model. They were like, what? And, you know, they're, why has no one told us this before? Why have we never been introduced to this? Why hasn't this been on our radar? And I don't know, my sample size is really small, guys, and I'm going to teach the class again next semester. But just this response that I'm getting from these 25 undergraduates makes me think there's just a big need. It's an educational gap, right? Right, that needs to be fulfilled. And I don't think it's even just the undergraduates who need it. Like, I think we all need it, and we all benefit from looking at the world through the lens of disability studies. So it's big. It's bigger than just one person or just one program. But I think if we just keep chipping away at it, like if I have these 25 students who like go off and I don't know, look at the world in a different way, we can just start spreading things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, Diana.
Mm-hmm.
I just
I'd
want to
like
say, we just have about a minute, but one of our topics that we're trying to secure a presenter for is on ableism in higher ed. So we hope it will be maybe to January. So be looking for that, because it will be a topic that we're going to just approach head on and look at where ableism is impacting our higher education system and our communities. So I'm so glad to talk about this, because it really is an elephant in the room, Barb. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to build bridges for people to have access to an education that so many individuals, and I can speak personally for my daughter, who just sat down because she has her IEP tomorrow as a senior, and said, I want to take ASL classes in college. And she says, I don't want to go to college full time yet, but I want to be able to take ASL classes on a college campus. And it makes sense for her, how she's progressed in high school. And I don't know what that's going to lead to, but right now that's what she wants to do. And so we're trying to build those bridges and not just not say no, right? And that's why it's very exciting to have an existing program and to have Diana and your community working so hard. And all of us keep having a vision and keep communicating not this medical model of disability, but that we are whole people, and education is just a key for so many. And I love what you said, Jessica, about having the community add to the academics of your school. You know, in other words, the value that this more diverse campus has, how that's going to add to the academics and the achievement of the students on your campus. And that's not something that's been researched.
No,
necessarily.
it is awesome. And I want to say something about Barb's thing about hope. I feel like we could stall out on this, but there's this upcoming generation that has grown up a little bit with more and more inclusion. And the coolest thing happened on our campus this semester that just brought me to tears. All of our students, when they come, they go through freshman orientation like everybody else. And the matriculated students go into what's called a first year seminar. So that's their orientation group. And they all go through orientation together, and then they go to class. Well, the first day of classes, some girl come walking around saying, I'm looking for this student. Well, I don't hire our peer navigators. We have so many, I don't know them all. And I just assumed she was a peer navigator. And come to find out, she was a freshman incoming student who knew one of our students was in her welcome week group, and they weren't starting class without him. He wasn't enrolled FYS because here we do have a little bit of a struggle. They make you take it for credit if you're going to be in it. So not all of our students take FYS, but that's a battle we're working on. But I just thought that is such a significant change from 7 years ago when we first started, that after 5 days, our student was missed. And they weren't going to let that professor go on until they found out where that student was. And so that's the hope where things are going to change, that this upcoming generation, it gives me a lot of faith.
Love that.
Well, that's a great way to close us off, Jessica. So thank you, everybody, for participating with your questions and your presentation and sharing information. We'll send a follow-up email, and if anybody wants contact information, also just let us know. Have a good rest of the night.
You as well.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.